Hello and welcome to our second Insight series. Today we'll be talking around persona insights and understanding who your customers are. So last week we really understood where your customers are, but now we're really understanding who your customers are. So today your presenters are myself, Joanna Evenden, who sits within the product team, and with me I have Joe, who I'll let introduce himself.
Hi there, I'm Joe Mountford. I am lead data scientist at Crimtan and help set up the Persona Insights report.
Thank you, Joe. And in terms of, before we go into the full agenda today, for anyone out there that's not familiar with Crimtan, we're just going to do a quick introduction to who we are. So we are a programmatic media partner that works across multiple different channels, from display, native, and audio, but to the newer channels as well, such as digital out of home and connected TV. Our proprietary technology enables us to plan, activate, and measure campaigns. And what we'll be focusing on today is the way we plan and activate, plan and gather those insights before we go into activation. As we've seen in the last few years, that planning and insights actually have a massive factor on driving those success KPIs for brands. So what are we going to be speaking through today? So first of all, what are persona insights and how can you use them? How do we measure at Crimtan persona insights, and how is this compared to how other people look about it in the market? And then also looking at a case study, and also what do we need in terms of that technical requirements in placing a pixel to actually facilitate running these campaigns. So if Joe, could you really talk us through what are persona insights and how can you use them?
Yeah, what a great question. It's kind of surreal to have a performance agency talking about persona insights, but we'll get onto why that is in the future. Yeah, persona insights are just the acknowledgement that our target market isn't a monolithic single person. Like maybe there is a brand out there that sells to a single person, but none of our clients are that. They sell to distinct groups of different people, and different groups of people need to be talked to in different ways, particularly in the digital ecosphere. Some people just aren't on video, some people aren't on social, and that's how you use them. You want to understand who they are, and based on that you're able to understand how you talk to them, how you reach them, and also how valuable they are. They may be a large segment of the people coming to your site, but if they don't buy, they shouldn't be engaged or integrated into your marketing plans.
So it sounds like persona insights. So people out there may be familiar with what persona insights are, but in terms of some of the challenges in the market, what are we currently seeing in terms of those key challenges for some of the brands on the call that might actually be seeing these at the moment?
Yeah, marketing managers who've had persona insights in the past, particularly if you've inherited them, will know where this comes from. It can be quite difficult. They come often from consultancies who build very engaging and interesting personas, but actually how you turn, I think we've got an example of Lucy, who enjoys macchiatos. That's interesting, but how do I reach Lucy? What do I talk to her about other than macchiatos, and what channels do I reach her on? A second problem is that, the limitations of the methodology. So because traditional persona insights use either surveys or focus groups to cluster the common behavioral segments and attributes, that can limit you in terms of sample size. If you've only got 1,000 people, that doesn't represent your 10,000 website users or converters. And then finally, you've got like a classic problem is self-reporting. This isn't the same for everyone, but for charities in particular, we all pretend that we donate to charity more than we actually do, and we're relying on self-reporting in surveys.
So there seems like there's quite a few challenges out there in the market from different ways of potentially looking at those insights reports. But how do we actually look at overcoming this at Crimtan, and what is the key methodology that we sort of look at there?
Yeah, for sure. Our methodology is primarily influenced by the fact that we wanted to overcome a lot of those limitations. The way that we do it, we use a similar clustering methodology. So that's step 2 in the flowchart. But the actual sample size that we use is everyone who comes to your website. This is because Crimtan has that proprietary technology that Active ID is able to consensually monitor and understand the users that come to your website. So this isn't just taking a subsample, it's taking everyone who's been to your website. Where have they been and have they converted as well? And from that, we're able to understand, yeah, those fantastic questions of what are they interested in, how are they engaging, and also where have they been? How can you understand? Because we have that referral, we know where they've come from.
So in terms of looking at sort of specific cohorts after we look at who engaged in a site, how specific can we actually go down then in terms of collecting that sort of site data?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Obviously, a persona insight, you want to balance generality and specificity. You don't want to go too niche so that we're just targeting Lucy, who likes her macchiatos, but we also want to stay generic enough. We don't want to be too generic in that we're just targeting women, because that's not helpful to anyone. So yeah, it's balancing that, and for that we use a statistical measure, that clustering metric, to understand where are we too granular, where are we too generic.
Okay, awesome. And in terms of, you know, once we've sort of analysed all these cohorts and understanding, you know, what those actual personas are, is there what are the sort of key things that we can pull for that? Can we reach it through our DSP? You know, is it something that they can pull in terms of just a standalone report?
Yeah, it's both. Yeah, those two outputs we both deliver in terms of a report that we deliver to our client to understand this is who you're working with, these are the key commercial elements, these are the key marketing elements to each persona. But we're also, because it comes from our data sets, feeds really nicely into our targeting systems. So we're able to use these as effectively audiences just to go for young professionals who have just bought a house. This is cluster A, this is Daniel, Daniel and other Daniels, and we can target these natively.
Okay, that sounds great. And in terms of, you know, some of the reports that we can get and insights that we can get, I guess some of the challenges, you know, you mentioned before is potentially putting those insights across other marketing channels. Is it something that we can help not just, you know, activate a Crimtan, but also take those insights and activate across sort of multiple different digital channels per se?
100%. That was one of our primary frustrations with the old persona reports we were seeing. We wanted to make these fit in. Crimtan experts have worked in all parts of marketing, so they understand what a social team needs to see in order to build their target audiences in the same way PPC, digital PR, and so on.
Great. And in terms of, I mean, you've already highlighted a lot of the value propositions there already, but I guess for people on the call that just want to pop out those key values in terms of how it really would be useful for them to use a persona insights, what would you say and sort of break that down to?
Yeah, the key value is breaking the monolithic audience. If you're ever told you have a single target audience, that's a red flag in my head. But then beyond that, you want to understand who are these people and how do we target them effectively. Many persona insights, certainly modern persona insights, we're not alone in this. Lots of people are offering similar options, but you do want to really ask that question of how do I action this persona insights piece, and that's where we shine.
That sounds like it's quite a lot of sort of value that we're putting for that. And I guess what might be helpful for people on the call is to understand how is this going into sort of a real life sort of case study. And I guess you've brought one with you. So it's great for you to talk through who the client was and a little bit around some of their key questions in terms of what they wanted to understand around their audiences.
For sure, yeah. If I'm honest, these are one of my favorite clients. They have some of the best questions, and they came to us with a fascinating question. They're a European luxury cruise company, and as a luxury cruise company, they have a limited number of converters. So they really wanted to understand who they were before they were going broad brush, because it can be quite expensive. You've got high transaction costs, or transaction value, so therefore you have high average order value and high value of person. They wanted to understand the right people at the right time. But they also had a limitation in terms of, thank you, yeah, that split between two different types of product. One was kind of cruise of a lifetime out to Antarctica to see the nature in Antarctica, and the other is more coastal, going around the edges of Europe, for example. obviously someone going on a cruise of a lifetime is potentially less engaged with city hopping around Northern Europe. So you want to be understanding that difference between the two. And that's the limitation of how do you get a significant sample size to split the two in a traditional survey or a focus group? Yeah. And in terms of their final problem was they're a European cruise company, but their markets are so diverse. A person in Germany, a cluster in Germany won't be relevant to a cluster in the US, for example. Very different economic and demographic structures. So those are their key questions.
Yeah, so it sounds like there was quite a lot of stuff going on there and trying to understand who their audience is. What was the sort of key, methodology behind it, and really taking consideration of what we've looked at before, and what did we actually do to sort of start answering some of these questions for our client?
Yeah, you've got a couple of the slides there on the left-hand side, but this was quite a comprehensive report. Obviously, we broke it down by each country so that we could talk to their regional marketing teams to make it appropriate to them. But we used the same methodology we talked about before, so taking users on site and clustering them. However, because they wanted to split their two audiences, their cruise of a lifetime and their coastal audiences, we were able to look at that on the website. We have a pixel down. We can see these users with active ID. And that way we're able to group into two distinct segments and then cluster those segments to say, what makes them different? Do we see Lucy in one but not the other? And the nice thing was the client is very commerce orientated. They really want to make sure that their money makes sense for them. So we were able to attach these personas to actual transactions that have been made, average order value, purchase conversion rates, and so on. So we were able to attach a value to each one of these personas, focus on this person, but not on this person.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful, how we're sort of not just looking at those personas per se, but actually how those personas are actually engaging in the digital world, and actually what the monetary value is potentially to those personas to help your strategy in your targeting as well. So I assume the client was sort of happy with the results. And what was the impact after sort of we went through that full methodology and analysis for them?
It was really exciting. They honestly hadn't been able to do something like this before because it's a really niche question. But they'd always wondered what makes their two product segments different. The quote there, bless them, we've never been able to understand who our customers actually are. And with this now we can. We were really, with Persona Insights, it initially feeds into the strategic direction of a brand and the activation. So in the long term, actual quantifiable results get diluted because it gets passed on to the social team, it gets passed on the PPC's campaign. It's a really broad brush. We saw fantastic results in terms of our targeting via these audiences, but that massively undervalues just how broad reaching it can be when a brand picks it up and then 2 years later is still talking about some of the families that we were able to identify in Germany.
And I think, yeah, I mean, that sounds like a massive impact. And I'm sure there's, some people on the call that are sort of have a sort of understanding of their audience, but they just need that extra push and insights in terms of just looking a little bit more in depth and actually understand how that's spit out a little bit more. So I think I'm glad the client was so happy with those results there. In terms of technical requirements, obviously it's something we need to take in consideration when we're pulling this type of stuff, because we're looking at directly the client's website. What is the important technical requirements that we have to look at here at Crimtan for that?
Yeah, we've been talking about its website traffic all the way through this, and that's what we're trying to understand. And as such, we do need the Crimtan pixel down on site. It's fully GDPR compliant, and it has fantastic technology behind it. I have seen some of the machine learning models, and it's fascinating. But it does need to be down on site. That's what allows us to track the behavioral segments, understand the users within a legal framework, and then feed back into it. Without that, you do have options of surveys. Like that's when surveys come into their own for understanding audiences that you can't track via digital means.
Yeah, and I suppose by placing a more advanced pixel down its site with the technology, it enables us to not only get more first-party data and get that at scale, but also enables us to, you know, take in consideration privacy first and our consent tag and so on. So I think that's a great place to halt the conversation. So I believe what we're going to come back in a few minutes after we've got a couple of questions come through from the audience today. Please make sure you tune in for next week, which is our brand uplift, if you do need to jump off the call now. But if not, we'll see you in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Ready? We're on camera.
Hello and welcome back. We have the questions here. So one of the first questions we have, which is a bit of a different one, is what is the most interesting persona that you found, obviously working not just with this client, but the sort of a niche example of how in depth that you potentially could go with those persona insights?
It really surprising. This one sticks in my head because it was challenging the client's expectations. Just to make it clear, it wasn't the luxury cruise client that we were talking about earlier. It was a luxury fashion brand. They were particularly interested to understand that on their website there was they'd always struggled with engagement. For some reason their site didn't get great engagement. We were able to, with persona insights, drill down into why that was happening. It was happening because there were a significant number of people browsing their website but not converting. No surprises there, but we were able to drill down into who these people were. These were people from lower economic backgrounds who were aspirationally trying to browse the website and see it from that kind of way, positioning the client not just as a retailer, but as someone who's able to offer and curate aspirational products. They were able to translate that into some really interesting marketing campaigns down the road, but they honestly had no idea that there would be non-luxury customers on their website.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear, and I guess you know, it does show you that, you know, people will be interested in potentially getting there, and it's important to have, you know, keep in mind the people that are aspirational, because there might be a point in time where they might be there, or, you know, there might be options of what potentially you could offer them in the meantime, which is really interesting actually, and nice to hear that impact. So another question that we have here is about, obviously we talked about impact of the campaign previously, and I suppose we did it very top line in terms of the results due to the privacy of our client. But I guess one of the questions is, how else can you measure the impact or success of using one of these insights reports beyond of just, you know, maybe recognizing who your client is? I know you touched base on it just then a little bit, which was interesting, but yeah, any thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, so this is something we're actually really excited to pioneer with a couple of our clients. Effectively, theoretically, you're able to A/B test, do a blind test between two groups. One is a random group or someone using a traditional monolithic audience, and the other option is using a group who are based on these persona insights. the hypothesis is that the thing we're testing for statistical significance is, does our persona perform in a significantly better way than the traditional marketing option? Because each client has a different KPI, you'd be focusing on different KPIs. But however, because we're looking to understand these users and they're already engaged with on-site activity, I'd have a very strong suspicion, or at least we in the tech team have a very strong suspicion, that these results will lead to significantly higher results. And that's the nice thing about a digital persona insights report, is that you can test it.
Yeah.
Whereas a traditional one is kind of non-falsifiable. You can't see if it's true or false, it just is.
So in a way, we're actually seeing better performance by changing that strategy towards that persona to actually drive the results. And because we do digital and we do measure in that sort of way, we can actually see that uplift of using the personas as well. So that's really great to hear. I believe that's all we have time for today. Unfortunately, I know there's a couple more questions, but please do reach out to us for any further questions you may have. But that is it for us today. As I said, please make sure that you attend next week, which is all about brand. And see you next week. Thank you everyone for joining.